one in the chat. Kat is very enthusiastic about you being here because she is a student of A Course in Miracles. And early on in our relationship, when we talked about favorite teachers, the name David came up quite a bit. So I know that she is very thrilled. And man, was she excited when I said, guess who's coming up?
Here we are, all joined.
Hi, Tiger King. So, guys, I will be largely absent from the chat as David and I talk, but you will open for some questions, maybe halfway through.
Sure, that would be wonderful.
Great. So, this is David Hoffmeister. I have something that you wrote that is just I discovered it the other day, and it's been playing through my mind, and it is the path of no plan, living by divine guidance. One of the things that has, as I mentioned to you just a few moments ago, that has greatly inspired me from your path is how you have actually done that from early on. But before we get to that, you had, when you were younger, you had several mystical experiences, right?
Yes.
And that led you to the course. But what was it about A Course in Miracles that resonated with those mystical experiences that you decided this is my path of awakening?
Well, I think the course actually came across my path around 1986, in the summer of 1986, and then it was maybe about 5 years of intense study and prayer and using the course as an oracle, that basically I got to the point where I had three revelatory experiences where everything just disappeared. It was just like blazing light. And I think those experiences were just so strong. They were like confirmations for me of how we're going beyond the veil of this world, but it does take a lot of miracles and a lot of healing and a lot of clearing of the unconscious mind. So they were like bright pointers, bright glimpses. And I was unaware of time during these light experiences, but it was just this feeling of almost like a direct connection, even though they were brief, and they were very strong symbols, reminders in my mind that this I was in the right direction, and so it helped increase my faith to stay with it, to keep practicing.
How long did those uh, miracles, those light episodes, how long did they continue for on your early stages of your path?
There was just three of them, and in each case, I was doing like an open-eyed, eye-gazing exercise with a friend, and we were just meditating. One time it was in the woods. Another time we were sitting across the kitchen table, and another time we were in a rowboat, and the wind was just blowing the rowboat. We'd pulled in the oars on a sunny, kind of windy day, and there was a sense of timelessness, and I would say they probably were maybe like 4 or 5 months apart. So there was some space in between them. But in each case, we were just doing open-eyed eye gazing, dropping into a meditation, and then for her appearance in front of me, it's like her body kind of merged in with the background. The figure ground disappeared, and then where the frame was, where her body was, and the background, that's where all this light started streaming through. And then it just kind of enveloped and took over my perception, and then my perception disappeared. It was just a direct experience of light with nothing else. It was very all-encompassing, wordless, vast kind of experience of unbelievable love. It's hard to describe it, but those were the way. That's how it occurred, and that's the spacing. It was probably over several months in between each experience.
How did that relate to the course for you? That it was that you were on track with the course and not maybe Buddhism, not maybe yoga, or not maybe another spiritual tradition. How was it the course itself that grabbed you?
Yeah, it was during those first 5 years, from 1986 to 1991, of it was really intense work with the course. Uh, I would say, on the average, the first 2.5 years, I was reading the course about 8 hours a day on the average. So I was quite immersed in it, and besides reading it, what happened would I would pray, and I would have formulate a question, and then I would just pray, close my eyes, and I would kind of open the book. We know nothing's at random, but open the book kind of randomly and receive a lot of answers to my questions and prayers through that, like using the course as an oracle.
Right,
And so that continued. But then when I read the answer, then I was just so inspired. I just kept on reading. So instead of chronologically reading, the preface and an introduction and straight through chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chronologically, I was using it as an oracle, and then I was reading for some hours each time I would do it. And probably the first 2.5 years, I was probably with the book probably 8 hours a day on the average, and it was getting, as a paperback book, it was getting very worn. I was wearing the gold the gold letters off of the
right.
cover. But that's how it was. That kind of preceded these revelatory experiences.
You spent time with Judith, right? Judith Scotch, or am I mistaken?
Yes, I spent quite a bit of time going to visit Judith Scotch. I spent quite a bit of time with Kenneth Wapnick and Gloria Wapnick. And I never did meet Helen Schuckman, the scribe, or Bill Thetford, but with Judy and Ken, yeah, I had quite a lot of visits. It was a little more formal with Ken and Gloria at the Foundation for A Course in Miracles up in the Catskill Mountains in Roscoe, New York. But with Judy, I was go out. She would invite me to lunch or dinner, and so my dinners and lunches with her and her daughter Tamra and other people that worked there, Deborah and different ones, it lasted over a period of years of just lunches and dinners where we'd spend basically half the day or a whole day together.
That's having that lineage, which Judith was right there at the beginning. Not at the beginning of the beginning, but at the beginning of the course, reaching out and getting towards people. I That I think, and of course having a direct line with Kenneth Wapnick, who many consider the premier course teacher. Um, I have the past year I've been immersed very much in Ken's work, buying his little pamphlets and reading through them. As well, right now I'm reading a book, the um, "Never Forget to Laugh," the
Oh,
story of William Thetford, who flew under my radar for a long time. He was the co-scribe, but I I always sort of in the back of my mind had him as the one who just organized Helen's thoughts, never realizing the role that he played truly,
yeah,
and it had to be those two together in order for the course to come out, uh, as well as the last part of his life when he did what basically you and I are going to talk about in a minute. He devoted the end of his life to forgiveness.
yes,
uh, the last several years of awakening through forgiveness. I'm not sure he would call it awakening, um, but he reached that point where uh, the last day, he said, I'm free.
yeah,
I've forgiven everything." And within hours of that statement, he had passed away. Uh,
yeah.
but amazing that you know the head of the psychology department at Columbia University devotes the last years of his life to just forgiving.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing. That is. In fact, I met the author, Carol Howe, who wrote that book, Never Forget to Laugh. And I, she was very much part of my early travels when I went down to Florida. And then also, we did a YouTube together in more later years. But yeah, she would always be telling me all these direct experiences she had with William. And since William and Helen were the first two Course in Miracles students, I felt that I was kind of getting it very vicariously through her. And I was quite curious about how he lived. And Judy Scutch also, Judy Whitson, Scutch Whitson, she told me many stories recounting Bill's last day when he visited her, and before he had that heart attack. And she even told me her neighbor watched him as he was going down, and he died before he hit the ground. The neighbor was a cardiologist, and so I just received so many parables of their direct contact with the course and how they applied it and lived it, and so many parables from those hours of talking to Judith, Ken, and also I would say with with Car- with Carol too. It was kind of a, a getting immersed with some of the original people that were really working with the course. So that I felt that was extremely valuable for me,
sure.
deepening in my practice.
I love that you just said uh, that Helen and Bill were the original students, which should let a whole lot of people off the hook. If Helen and Bill, uh, the ones who received the animation, were students, uh, that means that we don't have to. We can cut ourselves a little bit of a break. We don't have to master. We don't have to master it right now in this moment, the first time through the course. Um, you know, it's been said that Helen continuously argued uh, with Jesus. That I know it's true, I just don't like it. Um,
Yeah.
so, was there any doubt for you that the course was your path?
No, I felt from the beginning when I first opened it up. I went out to a humanistic psychology conference in La Jolla, California, very near San Diego, and I was at a conference, and there was people that were studying the course that were transpersonal psychologists. They're like uh, Virginia's. Well, I know Francis Vaughn and Roger Walsh, who were married. They were both course students. There was Carl Rogers, probably one of the most famous psychologists. He was speaking at that conference. But when I first opened it up with two students of an Indian master called Tara Singh,
Hmm.
they were there, and that's how I got the course. I bought Ken Wapnick's book, Forgiveness in Jesus. I bought Tara Singh's book, Nothing Real Can Be Threatened, and I bought the course. And so it was very mystical just in that first holy encounter. And I felt like my whole life would be changed forever. But from that very first moment, no, there was never once been a doubt thought about this being my pathway. It was so powerful that I was kind of taken up in it like a tractor beam or something.
Uh, the course is probably uh, the most important book that took me several years to finish. Uh, it, I knew it at the very beginning that I had a friend. I used to go to the uh, a local self-realization fellowship, Paramahansa Yogananda, and once we were having coffee together, and he asked me, "So, what is the path? What's our path for awakening? What's your path?" And he expected me to hear a particular yoga school or perhaps Buddhism. And I said, even though I had not finished the course yet, and I had picked it up and put it aside for several years, without any hesitation and surprising myself, I said, A Course in Miracles. Um, and For me, unfortunately, it took almost a decade before I made it through the workbook, and it was when I was confronted with a very trying time, and I just knew that my way to navigate this time was to devote it to the course.
Yeah.
What what was it? What made you fall in love with the course?
Well, the first time I opened the book out at that humanistic psychology conference in La Jolla, I I just felt like I could best describe it as like a tsunami of love, like a giant wave of love just washed over me when I opened the book and first started reading it. And it just stayed with me. This love was so strong. And the feeling was my life would not be the same. Whatever my trajectory was before that point, that now it would go in a whole different direction. And so I was kind of overwhelmed. I mean, there was a feeling of like a tickle in my heart, like kind of strong energy in my heart, and kind of very strong energy up in my forehead, and this like wave of love. And so it's funny you mentioned self-realization fellowship. I was on a trip to California with a friend of mine named Don, who was a Yogananda Kriya Yoga devotee. That was his path. And uh, once I reunited with him, um, we were going to maybe go up to the shrine up there in Los Angeles area for Yogananda Self-Realization Fellowship. But I found myself going where these two students of Tara Singh were. It was called the Foundation for Life Action, and it was it was there in on South Burnside in Los Angeles. So my friend and I met up there, and then when I went in, there were all these sayings on the wall, and I could see Ramana Maharshi and Yogananda and many Indian saints, and there were all these Course in Miracles sayings on the wall. It was this Course in Miracles community. And when I went there, I felt the same energy that I felt when I first found the book, and it was like washing over me. And it was like this old TV show, This Is Your Life. I felt like I started to see my life flashing before me just in going into this house. And so that really motivated me to go back to Cincinnati, Ohio, where I had grown up, and I was leaving my graduate program at that point, and then I felt a strong calling, like an inner calling, like this. I was to devote my whole life to this. So that's how it happened. It was through once again Yogananda, Kriya Yoga, Course in Miracles. It was all mixed in there together.
Time together.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
synchronicities.
I'm glad you mentioned Tara Singh because he was another one of the first two or three books that I bought dealing with the Course in Miracles. It wasn't the Course in Miracles, and he's another one that greatly inspired because of the commitment that he would have what year-long retreats of simply living, especially the introduction. Nothing real can be threatened. And when was it for you? You know, you said you were going to devote your life to it, and um, when did you get to that point where you were just surrendered? That uh, I know you were. The conversation that you were having with Jesus became very intimate. And when was it, or how long in your practice when you knew you were devoting your life to it, and that you truly were able to um, be unerring in hearing that voice and being guided, allowing yourself?
Well, the book, it was around August of 1986 where I came in contact with the book for the first time at that humanistic psychology conference. Then I would say about 2.5 years of intense study and prayer and devotion. And after probably that 2.5 or 3 years, I was getting signs and symbols, but I wasn't hearing a voice. I was just, bumper stickers, billboards, songs on the radio, library books. It was coming to me in dreams in many, many forms. But then after a few years, I just started to, it was kind of like with Helen, this stream of thought that this wasn't an audible voice, but it was a stream of thought voice. It was very clear and crisp, very light, loving, peaceful, joyful, and it was, very practical too, giving me practical instructions, answering questions that I specifically would have. It would give me a lot of pointers. And so then that was around 1989. I was working with some other students in Cincinnati at that time. And then one of the students said, "Why don't we go up to Monroe, Michigan? Because Tara Singh is coming to Michigan." And this was maybe like a 5.5 hour drive. So I went up when he was going to be giving a session. I've been following, like you were saying, those year-long retreats, Angel Fire, New Mexico, and out in Los Angeles, year-long retreats. But this was the time to go be with him in person. And then when I got there, I felt a strong energy, and he would get there maybe like 45 minutes, an hour before the session would start. He would just come into the room, the lecture room, and just sit and meditate. And I thought, this is perfect. I'm just going to go into the room and sit, find a seat, and just meditate with him. And I had some very deep experiences just meditating with Tara Singh. And then I would be there. I could feel the people energetically kind of coming in and filling in the seats, even though my eyes were closed. So that was the first kind of deep experience I had with a larger group of people up in Monroe, Michigan. And then the next year, I felt very strongly guided to a lot of miracles were happening. I was guided to a yard sale where I met a family, and the whole family said, "Where do we know you from? We know you." I'd never met them in my memory, but they kept reflecting, "We know you." Their son ended up selling me a $100 garage sale car that needed a carburetor and something else. And I took it all the way miraculously in one straight drive to Roscoe, New York, where Ken and Gloria Wapnick were in in 1990. And then I started meeting translators of the course who were up there at Roscoe. So I met people from all over the world that were studying the course and translating it. And even up in Roscoe there with Ken and Gloria, I started having all these mystical experiences where uh, people would have maybe their loved one had passed or a husband or wife, and they had all these questions, and they would take me out to dinner and they would ask me all kinds of questions, and I would just kind of be there, and then the presence would come through me answering them in very specific ways about their specific questions. So that those years were very interesting because I was speaking at a Course in Miracles group in Cincinnati where I lived. That was on Tuesday nights, and they would read. Each one would read a paragraph from the book, and then they would be ready to move on to the next person reading a paragraph. But whenever anybody had a question, they started asking the question, and the spirit started pouring through me. So it was kind of surreal looking Course in Miracles group where reading paragraph by paragraph, when there was a question, all the heads in the group, maybe 20, 25, 30 heads would turn to the David character to hear the answer, like I was now being used as like an oracle, which was very surprising for me because I was very shy, extremely shy. And, it's not something I didn't, think of myself as like Seth or Bashar or someone who channels spirit. I just was wanting to be truly helpful and just showing up to the group. And that's when it started to come to me and through me much stronger at that point.
Um, was fear still present? Was there any fear still present that am I truly hearing the voice of spirit, or am I just listening to a more subtle aspect of ego? Am I kidding myself? And when the more you started to surrender, um, at what point did you just, okay, I'm giving it all. I'm giving it all to spirit, and I'm living my life, uh, how it unfolds.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I was going to this Course in Miracles group that had no facilitator, and I just was an opportunity for me to just pray and be spoken through. While it was occurring, I had no fear and no doubt. But it's like when the group would end and I'd go home, the ego would start in on me. What did you say? And oh my God, what if people start following what you said? And what if you could bring harm to somebody? All the typical ego doubt thoughts started to come in more after the fact, like after I had left and had just was on, floating along, going through my daily life. That's when the ego would rear up. So there was definitely fear there. And then I actually decided that I'd say probably around the fall of 1987, I actually decided that I was to let go of grad school. I was to not finish my master's thesis. I was to dedicate my whole life to this calling, and I felt like I needed a period away, to kind of unwind a bit from 10 years of academic at the University of Cincinnati. So I ended up getting a small piece of land down in northern Kentucky and a small travel trailer, and I took my books, including Walden Pond, Henry David Thoreau, and inspiring works, that with me along with the course. And I lived out in the woods for weeks and sometimes months at a time, um, going much more with a hermit kind of a simple devotion, because I had to get away from the big city and from academia and family, friends, girlfriend, a lot of things. Felt to really consecrate my devotion to this pathway. So I would say that was the key. When I was down in Kentucky at this small travel trailer, I had a lot more mystical experiences. That's where my revelatory experiences, two of the three revelatory experiences occurred down there. And I feel like I somehow made some kind of a turn, that I was unwinding from my previous life path of university and something that I would call like it's like my life's calling, my life's journey. It was the very beginning of it.
At what point was the? I think you're well known for spontaneity and joy, um, and that's the. Whenever I talk to anyone, David Hoffmeister, the word joy, the probably the first word that just springs up. Uh, so when did spontaneity and joy just uh, spring up in your life, and you were just, this is it. I'm just a life of joy. You can't plan for it, that's for sure.
No, you can't. I kind of would have hoped it would have been more at the beginning, but I had so much undoing and unraveling and clearing to do at the beginning. I wouldn't say there was a consistent joy at the beginning, because it was quite tumultuous sometimes, like it is for most everyone. But then I'd say, you know, probably when I got into the 2000s, around 2003, I began doing like international travels where the spirit guided me down to Argentina and to many different places. It began a long phase of world travel where I would go to countries where I didn't speak the language. I didn't really know anybody in most cases. My trust level went much higher because I didn't speak the language. I didn't know people. So I had to really have expanding faith and trust. And then as I would go, and there would be so many miracles happening on these trips, 1 week, two, three, four, like that would be like, then the joy started to come in, like I felt really the joy moving in my heart. And that really got me going. It's kind of like being carried and lifted. It was the feeling. It was very new to my personality self, and that was part of the transfer of training, I think, becoming much stronger.
You were actually guided uh, not to charge for any of your teachings and to rely solely on uh, spirit. Whatever uh, came to you without any endeavoring on your part. Uh, you know, I'm not going to choose this because it's going to bring me greater income and safety, uh, or I'm not going to do this because it is the least fearful choice. You just basically opened yourself and said, "Okay, let's see.
Yeah,
What,
yeah,
what
that's
do you?"
part of the trust, because uh, when I started traveling internationally, then like for me to go to Argentina was a big leap from Cincinnati, from the Midwest. But a friend had offered to he had won a frequent flyer mile kind of prize, and he took myself and himself and two other friends, and so even business class, hecutiva they call it. And but that's the way it started to happen. It started to happen where things would just come to me in very surprising, unexpected ways. And so I thought, wow, this is working out. I don't have a plan for it, but it seems like if I'm just open and willing to be used in a greater plan, then I can not have to schedule and plan everything. I can just start to trust that the means will show up if I'm to extend the miracle. The means are provided with the goal.
Um, Fear is such a subtle, persuasive thing, though, that can come in when you endeavor to have that uh, trust. Uh, for me, it's often a case of I give myself to spirit. Can I have a sign? Uh, can I have a sign to show me that I'm actually going there? Um, which is really saying I trust, but with reservation, which limits um, the unfoldment of spirit. Because if you have that little reservation, um, you haven't completely surrendered.
Yeah, I think I can certainly relate to that. I feel like I needed lots of signs and symbols, particularly at the beginning. I felt like I needed to be shown the way and convinced through these signs and symbols. And then even when I had the signs and symbols, invitations and signs and symbols all around me, I still had to say yes
Right.
to what was being asked. And then when I did say yes, then my heart, my faith, my trust grew stronger every time I said yes. And it just started to build a momentum, a momentum of confidence and trust. So I think it's great that you're bringing that up, because that's most people I know, they say, yeah, I get to a point where I say, okay, I feel this, give me a sign, like show
Right.
me something, like show me that this is the way. And I had a lot of that for sure.
Did you ever say no when you were guided to do something? Did you ever say no? It's too much right now.
No, I actually feel like I just got it into such a rhythm of trusting and saying yes, and the trust grew so quickly that it just didn't occur to me to say no. There were times where I might hesitate and I might say, "Okay, I'm hearing this, but I'm going to give this back to you once again,
Right.
and please show me or make it obvious if this is actually what you want me to do." And so that's how it went.
It reminds me of uh, someone's gonna laugh when I say this. It reminds me of the Meatloaf song. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Can you give me something a little easier, Holy Spirit? Um, but I do want to emphasize all of that's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay to say no, I'm not ready. It's okay to ask for signs, uh, but because each time uh, it does, you open up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Everyone's path is going to be different, and as you even said, there was a lot of undoing uh, on your part or on Spirit's part for you before you reached that point where you just said okay. You started saying yes. Um, so a lot of times, I think that we make that commitment and then we start getting upset and even punishing ourselves because we feel that we are imperfectly following the design. But I think maybe the imperfection, those little niggling doubts, are part of opening up along the way.
yeah, yeah, that's it. The spirit has definitely has a convincing job with our mind, with our sleeping mind. And so we just have to honor that and say, okay, I'm gonna do the best that I can. I'm gonna open up. I'm gonna try to listen and follow. When I have fear and doubt thoughts, then I have to at least let them up into awareness and be aware of them and be willing, if I am willing, to hand them over and to trust. And I guess my common prayer was help. was That was my prayer, was I need help. And then another one was please make it obvious, because there were times when I just felt like I wanted it to be as clear as possible. I didn't want to be going down any detour roads or distracted. But so I would say please make it obvious.
Why have I never thought of that? I absolutely love that. Please, what a great prayer. Please make it obvious. And you know what? You could also pray, please make it a little easier. Uh,
Yeah,
things have been tough. Things have been
yeah,
tough, and I need a little bit of a sign. Please make it obvious, and if you don't mind, maybe gentle. Uh, you know, Spirit will meet us where we are.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
not asked to take these huge, giant leaps. And the course is a course in mind training. So we're ready when we're ready, and not a moment before. But
okay,
was it Julian of Norwich? Every step to heaven is heaven.
yeah,
So
yeah,
every step to Spirit, every step to Jesus, every step to God, every step to love is love.
yes,
Every single step.
yes,
Do you mind if I unpack uh, what you wrote, or actually ask you to help me unpack it? Um,
sure,
I absolutely love this. The path of no plan, living by divine guidance, and you offer a general um, summary. I think this is going to resonate with so many people. By the way, probably most people in the chat aren't students of A Course in Miracles. Um, and I do a lot of talks in yoga. We do breath work and stuff like that. But I love these talks because I don't think everyone needs to be a student, but the principles that are discovered in A Course in Miracles are universal and helpful to everyone. So I think in certain times, uh, when we need it the most, that it'll come to someone. You know what? I was on a live stream and I heard David say this, and it comes to us perfectly.
mm,
So um,
yeah.
let's see. The ego's problematic planning. So what's the problem with the ego's planning? Why is the ego doing it wrong?
Well, the ego is the belief in linear time, and so it's basing all of its future plans on what it learned and taught itself in the past. So you can see it's kind of a closed system. If everything that's planned is for the future is based on past learning, then it's a closed loop. It's a way to stay stuck in guilt, stuck in fear. But what Jesus is teaching us through the Course is that the present moment is our point of guidance, it's our point of power, it's our point of escape from this belief in linear time, because he teaches us that time and eternity cannot both coexist. One is real and one isn't. And so when we start to unpack this planning, I think probably the workbook lesson 135 is the strongest lesson, where Jesus talks about time. And he says the healed mind is relieved from the belief that it must plan. And he also says that if there are plans to be made, there is one within you that knows your greater good, will tell you of it. So he's not trying to tell us we have to just stop planning immediately. He's just saying, just rely on your intuition, rely on your inner guidance, and learn to rely on the spirit to guide you. And if there's plans to be made, then you can make them confidently. And this was very important for me, because after a while, with all my spontaneous travels and small groups, I started to get invited to big conferences. And those conferences sometimes would ask me a year or 2 years in advance for a conference of like 500 Course in Miracles students and teachers. And I would just have to pray, and Jesus would tell me, yeah, yep, you're supposed to go to that. Say yes. So that was clearly a plan, but it was more just not based on the past, on anything from the past, trying to build a career or make a lot of money or things like that. Just yes or no. Am I supposed to say yes to this invitation, even if it's a year or 2 years in advance? So it's very practical. I find this is a very practical pathway.
So that's what you termed Jesus's radical no plan.
Yes. Because it's in the moment. It's not like really. He's never giving me like a big long plan of like a 5 year plan or 2 year plan or 6 month plan. It's just usually with us, if it's a specific event where I have a question that's in the future, he will give it to me. But he's not asking me to fill my calendar up.
Right. Um, so yeah, as you continue that, it's a way of living, and it really is a way of living, isn't it? It's not a
Yes.
you're not saying I'm going to do this. You just do it. Um,
Yeah, it's a way of living. That's a good way to put it.
and as you said, it's 100% intuitive, 100% guided, and 100% aligned with Holy Spirit. This means waking up daily and praying, Holy Spirit, decide for God for me, committing to making no decisions on my own. Uh, of course, I remember reading that. And I remember reading, I will make no decisions today. And immediately making the decision that I'm going to make no decisions today. Um, and uh, which, there's a great intent behind that. For me, I will make no decisions today. But getting to there has been a journey to me. But I find that not living it 100%, but my commitment grows. Uh, every little time when I do just uh, allow myself to be guided, the connection to the guidance grows, expands. And I feel it's not confidence, it's just an overwhelming yes in my body that is embracing this path. I absolutely love I love the word radical anyway. Jesus is
Mhm.
radical, no plan. Um, and also your the teaching emphasizes that the more clueless you are, which is easy for me. I've spent my life clueless. The more clueless you are about the world, the closer you come to reality. Echoing A Course in Miracles lesson, nothing I see means anything. Um, so the third part was relief from the burden of planning. Um, can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I think when we look at the human condition, it seems like it's just a default setting to plan a lot. We're taught for our jobs, for our careers, for our personal lives that we should have future goals and plans, and sometimes it feels like there's a lot of them. Like we're really to schedule ourselves. We're to have a book, a scheduler, a calendar, and really fill that calendar up and plan our days and weeks and months and years. But what Jesus is saying, he just says at one point, you may have noticed how different the goal of this course is from your former goals. And he's going to be emphasizing the holy instant, which Eckhart Tolle calls the power of now, the present moment. Many mystics and saints have emphasized the present moment. And Jesus will say in his Course in Miracles that the present moment is the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. But that's pretty radical. I mean, all of us have been taught about time and segmenting time and degrees and measurements. History itself is just seems to be a timeline. But Jesus says at one point, he says, history would not exist if you didn't keep making the same mistake in the present. So now I'm curious. I'm like, if all of history is just one repeating mistake that just repeats over and over, like Groundhog Day with Bill Murray,
Right.
it caught in a loop of time, and you just keep making the same mistakes day after day after day, then I'm curious what kind of journey this will take me to be more fully present. Like Eckhart Tolle talks about allowing yourself to be fully present with whatever you're experiencing, whether you're outdoors or indoors, but coming back more to that intuitive listening and presence. So to me, that's what it means to embark on a journey without distance to a goal that's never changed. It's a fundamental undoing of our beliefs and our past conditioning to make way for something fresh and new, which to me, that's what the miracle is.
And of course, that doesn't negate. A lot of people are worried that, well, I won't I won't be a lawyer, I won't be a doctor, I won't be this. But if that is what you're intuitively guided to be, you will still be. You don't need to. You don't really need to plan to do it. You will do it because um, that's what you're intuitively meant to do. Um,
Yes, yes. I mean, I have a woman who's a medical doctor who just wrote to me yesterday, and she has been studying the course for many years, and she was asking me, you know, do you have a movie that you can recommend that will help me question and undo my belief in martyrdom? Because of course martyrdom has been a kind of a topic, pretty strong topic recently here in the United States.
right.
And and then also I had another friend when I traveled around. I met him up in Michigan, and he was a lawyer. And I remember him just saying, "My house is your house. Stay here as long as you want. Here's the fridge. Here's a lake in the backyard if you want to go swimming. Make yourself at home." And so he was a lawyer. So I would say to him, "You're a lawyer and a Course in Miracles student. Fascinating." And he would say, "Yeah, I know. I I counsel. I work with a lot of clients who are going through divorces and all kinds of legal struggles. But when I get a group in a couple, for example, in that are going through a divorce, I I will just turn in the middle of my conversation with them, and I'll point out a Course in Miracles saying that I have on my wall." I said, "You mean in your legal office you have a Course in Miracles saying on your wall?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And it was always one about not judging or seeing the holiness. And so I could see where he was still using that profession. The spirit was using that profession, but was using the symbols coming through him, and I said, "Wow, what a big heart you have!" But you're my first example of a Course in Miracles lawyer. I told him that's the first one that I've met.
Um, by the way, our friend Kat in the chat says, David, my house is your house.
Oh, beautiful! I see it in the chat. Beautiful.
Um, so next we go with setting the goal for peace. Why peace? Why is that our goal?
Well, I I think I do remember reading in the Course where Jesus was saying that that the peace of God was to be my goal. I remember reading the passage exactly. It says, "The peace of God is my one goal, the aim of all my living here, the end I seek, my purpose, my function, and my life while I abide where I am not at home." That was Jerry Jampolsky's favorite passage out of the whole book.
Well,
Here's a psychiatrist who I first heard it from him on a video, saying that that was his favorite passage. But that's pretty direct. And what Jesus is talking about is he's talking about peace of mind or inner peace. He's not talking about world peace. He's saying that we have to undo all the blocks in our mind to the awareness of love's presence, and then that peace will be a natural condition, a natural state of mind that we just radiate. And I could see where peace was related to forgiveness, that forgiveness was what I was devoting myself to, and I think peace of mind was more the outcome of of that devotion to that goal of forgiveness.
um, you know, I mentioned that uh, my hope is that even for people who aren't students of the course, that they find some little glimmer to hold on to. And I think setting your goal as peace might be that little glimmer. If every situation, even if you're a lawyer, imagine if you approached it with my goal is peace. No matter what
Yeah.
the goal for the outcome is going to be peace. Uh, how different would you approach everything?
Yeah, I think that is very practical because we're used to so many form goals. We've been taught to try to achieve and accomplish a lot of form goals, but none of us really, I mean, I certainly didn't consider present peace of mind as a goal. I would say that's strange to even call it a goal. But then Jesus is so practical. He's saying, well, if you look at your state of mind, it kind of bobbles all over the place. It's quite conflictual. And he's saying that peace is actually a worthy goal. And it's very practical because you can feel when you're in it.
Right, right.
And then, so he's just asking us to have faith, I think, to put it out front. So I started practicing the course. There's a prayer at the near the beginning of the text. I think on page 24 in the first edition, maybe 28 on the later editions. But it was that I am here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent Him who sent me. I don't have to worry about what to say or do, for He who sent me will direct me. I'm content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me, and I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. So I started to practice that every day. Uh, I memorized it in my heart, and then when I would go to visit my grandmother or go to the grocery store or go out to go to a laundromat or take a walk or anything, I would kind of pause. And before I would go through a doorway, even to a Course in Miracles group, I would pause and silently say that prayer to myself to orient myself back toward that peace. That's what I did.
Can I give a personal example of that little prayer?
Well, that'd be great.
I took a little leap of faith and sent a message to David Hoffmeister. Would you like to come on my channel? And I got the sweetest, most joyful message. I'd love to. I could be there Monday at 1 o'clock. Um, and you truly live to be truly helpful. and you showed up. I have a friend. Her YouTube name is Miss Blipper, uh, and she normally comes up on Mondays at 1 o'clock, and we talk all things Course in Miracles. And last week she told me I won't be able to make it this week because she has a friend. She lives in Rome. She has a friend coming to town. She's like, I hope you don't mind. I said, no, of course. You got a friend coming to town you haven't seen for a long time. Um, into that void, 1 o'clock on Monday, no one talking about A Course in Miracles. David Hoffmeister hops up and says, I'll talk about A Course in Miracles. Uh, it just worked out so perfectly. And again, your message was just so filled with kindness um, that I was overwhelmed.
That's beautiful. That, and I remember you wrote back to me and you went, among other things, holy cow. I thought it feels like we're in a Batman episode. And Robin, holy cow.
I was, to use a word we don't use often anymore, I was flabbergasted. Um, so
Oh,
next, we come to chaos as an opportunity for surrender. That's important because we're in chaotic times.
yes, we really are. That's we're really navigating things the best we can every day.
So how do we use this time? And how do we use chaos? Why is chaos an opportunity to surrender? And then maybe if you could touch upon how do we do that now in this time?
Well, I do remember in the course where Jesus talks about the laws of chaos, and he says, if you believe that your feet are standing on solid ground, you do believe in these laws of chaos. And yet, he's given us a goal that is so uh, amazing that we can transfer and practice with whatever we're perceiving. So when people talk to me about A Course in Miracles, I say, well, just like in 12-step programs, where you go to find some sense of healing and connection with the higher power, one of the first steps that you go through in 12 steps is admitting the problem. You have a problem. Otherwise, it's like the denial is too thick. So I asked Jesus, I said, well, how does this work for me? And he said, well, imagine you went to a 12-step Course in Miracles group and you went around the room and you had to introduce yourself and you give your name like they do in 12-step meetings. And then instead of saying that you're an alcoholic or a drug addict or a sex addict or something, just say, hi, my name is, give your name, and I have a perceptual problem. Because he said, before you can actually start to really navigate what seems like chaos and a very topsy-turvy world, you need to come first to an admission that you have a perceptual problem. And so I said, well, what does that mean? I have a perceptual problem. And he said, well, first of all, you you are psychotic. I said, I'm psychotic. He said, yeah, the definition of psychosis is you've had a break from reality. Heaven is reality. Nirvana is reality. You've had a break from reality. Second of all, you're schizophrenic because you're hearing multiple voices. And I said, what do you mean? Hearing multiple voices? He said, yeah, your friends, your family, and all the billions of people in the world are separate voices. You're schizophrenic. You're hearing multiple voices. You're not hearing one voice, you're hearing multiple voices. And I said, okay, is there anything else? And he said, yeah, you basically have a multiple personality disorder too, dissociative disorder. I do. Why? Because you perceive many alter selves, yourself and all these others, and you've got a case of multiple personality disorder as well. You're psychotic, you're schizophrenic, and you have multiple personality disorder. So he said, that's your perceptual problem. you're perceiving a world that actually isn't there. That reality is pure love and light, eternal light. And you're perceiving a world of images through these five senses and a personality self that is a perceptual problem. So you may think you have relationship issues, financial issues, issues around politics or the planet, geopolitical issues, but you actually have, if he's going to give it to me straight, you have to first admit you have a perceptual problem. You're perceiving a fragmented world like a kaleidoscope, and heaven is nothing like that. And there is another step you can go where you can actually follow the instructions of the Holy Spirit, and He will take you to a new way of looking at this world of images without judgment, just to see it, still see the same sights and sounds, colors, shapes. You still perceive all those things, but you're in a state of silence and non-judgment. And he said that's what you're going to need first before you can wake up from this dream of separation. You're going to need to have your perceptual problem corrected, and the Holy Spirit is your teacher, your inner teacher, for doing this. And that's why Jesus is a good example, a role model, because he just heard one voice. He heard the Holy Spirit, not at the beginning of his life, but he reached a point where he listened only to one voice, not to two, and his perceptual problem was healed. So to me, that was very powerful because, we're all used to categorizing our problems, degrees and directions, and labeling them in all kinds of categories. And he was saying, if you follow the Holy Spirit, you'll start to let go of those boxes, those categories, and you'll feel much better when you do.
What I love about that is recognizing the problems, recognizing the chaos, not denying them. We're not bypassing anything. We're not
Yes.
closing our eyes and saying, I see no evil, I hear no evil. We are saying, okay, it's a chaotic world. There's some problems. But as you just said, it's a problem of perception. It's not a problem of actuality. Um, that felt a little huge to me. That's that seemed like uh, two words that don't belong together. A little huge, but it felt it felt a little huge. Like a little part of my heart just opened up to exactly what you just said. Uh, Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
imagine having online groups where we just come together and we wave at each other and we say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I have a perceptual problem," and off we go. We trust in the spirit to take us out of the perceptual problem.
and it really is that simple.
Yes,
Uh, there's the problem. Here's the solution. Of course, now we're told to work it, uh, which is okay. Uh,
yeah,
I love I love a task. Um,
yes,
so, you know, the problem is if you love a task but you don't know what the problem is, you're floundering. But you laid it out so perfectly that here's the problem. Now let's all pitch in. Uh, let's address maybe our personal problems, our personal chaos. And as we do that, the collective sort of takes care of itself.
yeah. That's it. That's it.
All right, so we'll do one last one, and then maybe answer some questions. The shift from doing to being. Uh, I read this to Kat the other day, and I was mentioning, where the hint on how to do that for me was in the title that we've been given. We're human beings. Uh, we're not human doings.
Yeah.
Uh, any tips on making that shift from doing to being?
Well, for me, the key was tapping into that intuition, that intuitive voice, that inner guidance, because that is that is the voice of our higher self, our helper, our comforter, and the more we do that, then we actually start to be open to receiving even specific guidance, and that helps us collapse time. When we're trying to do everything all on our own without just purely analytical, I'll say, based on past learning, then we can flounder and go in circles. But once we start to get in touch with that intuitive listening, it can be through signs and symbols, songs on the radio, someone speaking to us and telling us something that really is for us. It's a message for us. Not that we have to hear it within our personality. We can even come from somebody else. But the more we're willing to be guided, then we start to be willing to be used as part of this greater plan of awakening. And then when that happens, I say that we're done through. In other words, instead of feeling like we are the doer or the human doing, we feel like more like our body is like a marionette, and there's a presence in us that knows our greatest good. In fact, it knows the greatest good for everything and everyone. And when we start to let that presence speak through us and use our body in ways, I call that being done through, where it's like Jesus says, judgment through you rather than by you occurs. He says in the manual for teachers, how is judgment relinquished? Judgment through you rather than by you. So I think being done through is when you're in alignment, when you're feeling joyful, happy, you're in your peace, and then whatever flows through you, the words, the actions, the behaviors, it's more like you're like the Pinocchio puppet, but you're back on the strings, and ideally, then the spirit will say the presence of love is holding the crossbar, is moving the puppet. And I think there's a lot of, I know in Eastern teachings they talk about right action,
Right.
and what Jesus is saying is he says what you do comes from what you think. And so it's with your thinking that we must work. So he's working with our thoughts, our beliefs, our consciousness to help us clear away the egoic thoughts, the fear, the conflict thoughts. And then we can't just go from a human doing to a pure being of spirit. We have to go through phases that are practical for us, because it's too frightening otherwise to just deny the body and try to deny our earthly experiences. That's just too much. He said, don't do that. Just be intuitive and let me start to light your heart up, give you inspiration, and then follow that inspiration, and then you'll feel more like it's just happening through you instead of from you. So that to
Right.
me is a way of describing it.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. So we have you ready for a few questions?
Sure, sure.
I'm going to give the first one to Kat because Kat. It was Kat's love for you that inspired me to reach out uh,
Oh,
because
beautiful.
she loves your teachings, she loves your presence so much that it was okay. I need to reach out to David and see if he'll come here. She says, "A Course in Miracles says our creations are eternal and remain in heaven. How can we begin to experience or remember these creations while we still seem to be in the dream?"
Yeah, Jesus says our creations are waiting for us. So it seems to be that while we believe in linear time, we have blocked the remembrance of our creations, just as we blocked the remembrance of our true identity and we blocked the remembrance of God. So I would say A Course in Miracles is a very practical pathway of forgiveness. And every single moment of every day, we are practicing that forgiveness. That's how we're coming back to that ability to remember what is real. But when our mind is preoccupied with all the images and linear time, then our goal is to forgive and in some sense, I would say, lose track of time. So we know how little children are. When little children start to play on a summer day, they automatically lose track of time until maybe their mother calls them in to come in for dinner or tells them to come in. Something has to interrupt that timeless play. And they're very gleeful and joyful in their play. And when we think of that in terms of being adults, I think we have to realize that we're praying to have an inspired life, and inspired means really in the spirit. And through that, we actually learn to experience an actual state of forgiveness and peace that is opening our mind back to the eternal. And our creations are eternal, they're eternal being. So when we forgive and we devote our heart and soul, our mind to forgiveness, that's how we're returning back to the beginning, the I am presence before time was, that Jesus talked about. Before Abraham was, I am. So we're actually retracing our steps and going back toward that I am presence where we remember our creations exactly as they are.
Um, so what are here in this dream? What are our true creations? How do we know this is a true creation, not from the ego, but a true creation that is going to last, that is going to remain in heaven?
Well, true creation is purely on the realm of spirit. So just like in the Bible, when some of us read the Old Testament, the begat, and we had Adam and Eve, and then we go to Abraham and Abraham's son, and on, and all the begats. What we consider procreation, which is human generations of people, is actually what Jesus calls projection. So he's teaching us that when we believe in the ego, we project a world that has nothing to do with creation. We're not even co creators. He's teaching us that we're co creators in God, in spirit. That's why we have creations in spirit. But spirit comes from spirit, comes from spirit. So God is spirit, Christ is spirit, and Christ has perfect creations that are purely spirit. They're eternal in nature. So, what we talk about in terms of the world of projections, we use the word manifestation, we use the word existence, we use the word, these are all on the field of time and space. And even quantum physicists like Einstein and different quantum physicists throughout the world have said that there really is no objective world. There is no perceptual world. Uh, I remember I was reading a quantum physicist from Australia. I think his name was Paul Davies. And in his book, this quantum physicist says there is no world. Then, if you go to lesson 132 in A Course in Miracles workbook, Jesus says there is no world, exclamation point. He even puts an exclamation point after it. So what he's teaching us is we are having a perceptual hallucination of separation, a hallucination of differences, and that this hallucination of images and differences in time don't have anything to do with creation. In terms of what we talk about, I mean, I went to the College of Design, Art, and Architecture at the University of Cincinnati for 5 years. And I would consider art, we have creations in art, we have creations in music, we have creations, in design. But Jesus is saying, no, those are all projections and manifestations that seem to take on different forms, but you've lost touch with your true creative ability, which is purely spirit. So what we're dealing with the ego is miscreation. And miscreation involves guilt and fear. And that's why mysticism is more just a devotion to God and just to take all the tiny steps that we can take, I call them miracles, every day to help us clear away the debris in our mind, to clear away all the spots of fear and doubt, purify our mind and our heart.
And the Course actually says devote every day to miracles.
Yes, yes. Every day should be devoted to miracles. Yes.
Our friend Squirrel Sniper says, question, David, um, does it mean to live as if you have no personal will? And what are the practical implications for this radical surrender?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Because a personal will comes from the belief in personhood and separation. The persona in the Latin means mask, and so if my will is tied to the mask or the personality self that I seem to have, then I won't know the fullness of my true nature, or the fullness of the one spirit that we all share, the oneness of God, the unity of God's love, the union of God's spirit. So to me, that's what I've devoted the last, let's say, about 39 years to, listening and following intuitively, to lose all sense of a personal will. And what that means is just opening to a state of non-judgment, to really accept all things exactly as they are, and to experience the divine flow that is our reality, is our essence. So that's what the goal is. When I have a goal of peace, I had to let go of the idea of competition. I had to let go of the idea of comparison. And another question could be, well, how do you let go of comparison? Like, how did you do that? And I'd say, well, like, even when I was on my travels around the United States and the world many, many times, oftentimes I would just go into a restaurant, they would bring a menu, and I would either hear internally exactly the menu item that I was to order, or I would ask the waitress, you pick for me. Or if I had a friend with me, I would say, why don't you pick what I'm going to eat? and and gradually that helped me loosen up from this personal will sense of, I want it my way. I want it to be just so. I want it to be according to my personal will, my personal preferences. So you can see it takes a lot of trust. It takes an enormous amount of faith and trust just to move in that direction, because the ego is very anchored in a personal will and in a personality self, taking pride in sense of personal skills, personal abilities, personal whatever, wealth and possessions, personal whatever, fill in the blank. That when we let go of the desire for a personal will, we're really letting go of judgments and the desire that outcomes have to go a certain way.
I think that leads nicely into a question from Li Lu, who says, could we be a little more considerate to the vulnerable and to the people that irritate us? Does the Course try and help to look at everyone as if we met them for the first time?
Yeah, I really believe that's exactly what the Course is calling us to. Is like he's calling us into the holy instant, and what we could call meeting someone as if we're meeting them for the very first time, Jesus calls a holy encounter. And he's teaching us that we can train our minds to free ourselves of judgment and have a holy encounter with everyone that we meet, and in the end, everyone that we think of. And I would say that's where it takes a lot of practice, because we have been used to judging based on our past beliefs and past conditioning. And this way of trust and faith is opening us to these beautiful holy encounters. Jesus says, when you meet anyone, remember it's a holy encounter. As you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you will think of yourself. Never forget this, for in him you will find yourself or lose yourself. You're either going to find yourself in the present or you're going to lose yourself in the past. And that's why we have to really be fresh, very fresh.
Um, could you speak just for a moment about the importance of not going to battle with the ego, not suiting up and saying, I will defeat the ego once and for all? Because that's just the ego suiting up and saying, I'm going to give myself a project to stay busy. Uh, I think a lot of people, when we talk about the ego, um, they think, okay, well, I'm going to get rid of it once and for all. I'm going to dive on in and wrestle it to the ground and put it in submission, uh, which is just what the ego wants.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. The ego is looking for a fight. It wants us to go to battle. It wants us to try to kill it. And what Jesus is asking us to do is he's asking us to, because the ego is mostly unconscious, he's asking us to allow the unconscious mind to be raised up into awareness. And in that sense, he's asking us to expose the ego, not fight it, but expose it and see it for what it is. So there's a beautiful quote from Jesus where Jesus says, you've made the ego by believing in it, and you can dispel it by withdrawing your belief from it. That's very different than fighting it, just exposing it and withdrawing your belief from it. So for me, in a practical way, this is where the forgiveness comes in, because every time we're tempted to judge or tempted to blame or tempted to get angry at somebody, the spirit is saying, come here, come inside here with me, and let go of your attachment to this person and to this outcome and see it in a new way. And the Holy Spirit only sees love and a call for love, two orders of thought. But as long as we believe in the ego and want to hide it and protect it, then we believe in attack. And as soon as we do, then we get caught up into conflict. So we're practicing at learning to see everything as love and a call for love. And actually that takes a lot of practice, because all of our self-concepts, if, for example, if we're identified as a man and somebody comes along and says, all men are this way, and we feel a defensive reaction coming up, it's because of our own mind's identification with the man. And then we're feeling defensive because we believe it's happening from someone outside ourselves. But it's a trick of the ego. All of our attack is really just a belief system of the ego, and then it sets up attack and defense scenarios that try to trick us into reacting and blaming instead of just releasing and forgiving.
um, I think when you said everything's a call for love,
Love and a
that
call for
touches
love.
and that touches back on what Lee was saying about does the course say meeting people for the first time or the most vulnerable or the ones that irritate us? They're just asking for love. Um, the onus is always on us. Can I listen to that call better? Maybe than I did the last time, or the time before, or the time before.
Yeah.
Um, we have a follow-up question from Kat, and she says, "So, is it possible to directly experience the joy of our creations while still in the dream? And if so, how might that reveal itself?"
Yeah, I think it is possible to open up to joy. In fact, in the Course in Miracles, it says the Holy Spirit is the spirit of joy, and the Holy Spirit's curriculum is a curriculum of joy. So he's emphasizing that joy is natural for us in the truest sense, that when we're in the flow of alignment with Source, we're aligned with our intuitive voice, our inner wisdom, then our natural condition is joy. And you might say that our creations, which are purely spirit, are completely joy. They're just entirely joy. And so, what we do experience in this world as we're in alignment with that creative essence is we experience reflections of joy. And I would say that's been the greatest experience in the parable of David is all these reflections of joy, all these hugs, all these beautiful holy encounters all around the world in 44 countries and 49 states have all come about just from surrender, from saying to spirit, use me, use me for joy, use me for the experience of joy. I think it takes quite a lot of consistent alignment before we can experience the joy consistently. And so most people who are on the spiritual path, they do say to me, I have not had consistent joy. And what do I have to do? And I just say, well, that's just deep devotion and inner listening to the one who inspires the joy, the Holy Spirit.
Um, to see if anyone else has any more questions. And Kat's gonna love that answer, by the way. Thank you. Uh, so if no more questions, I got one that I think that is right up. Simon says, "Well said." It sends you some love. Um, what movie should I watch? Um, relatively recent movie that might sum up um, the path of forgiveness, the path of joy, the path of spontaneity. What's the David Hoffmeister recent recommendation?
Very recent. Well, just a couple weekends ago, I was online with a whole group of people and we watched the latest Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise. And I called that movie Mission Accomplished because Tom said it was his last movie in the series. So what I did was it is I have it on online. If you if you type online in Google or one of the AI searches, David Hoffmeister Mission Accomplished, what you'll see is there's a commentary that I made, and the movie was so long that it took us 2 days. It took us a Saturday and Sunday to get through with commentary and setup. But that was showing the spontaneity of and precision of following the spirit, that every day we're faced with decisions, and the more we're able to say yes and flow with the spirit in those decisions, then things unfold very rapidly, and they take us in that movie. I'll say that it was an AI uh, program that was trying to take over the world. So Tom Cruise playing Ethan Hunt was trying to prevent AI from taking over the world. But the AI was very smart. And it was trying to use missiles from different countries to blow up the world. But through collaboration and through precise communication and through precision of everyday daily miracles, they were able to avert the world getting blown up. And so I was using it as a teaching movie to show practical examples throughout the movie with commentary and setup on how you can apply this to your daily life. So we had about 68 people
Well,
in there online, all going through this experience together. But that's a very recent movie. That's something that I have a whole collection called Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment, mwge.org, where I do commentary on many, many movies throughout, I would say more of their enlightenment movies to tap in to go into the deeper realms.
Kat mentioned that earlier did a live stream at 5 a.m. and she mentioned it, that you do that. Highly recommend guys visiting. You have time for one more question?
Sure, sure.
This is from Squirrel Sniper again, and I definitely wanted to get this in because it seems a very important question. How do you distinguish between true forgiveness as taught in A Course in Miracles and simply condoning um, or excusing another's behavior?
Well, we've all been raised with concepts of forgiveness, but the true forgiveness that you're asking about, Jesus describes as you forgive your brother for what he did not do. And on the surface, that can be like, run that by me again, Jesus. What was that again? Forgive my brother for what he did not do. And Jesus again is pulling it back to perception. He's saying that we're not trying to excuse behavior, we're not trying to deny it. We're just starting to realize that whenever you get upset, you're never upset for the reason you think, and it's because of a judgment or a false interpretation that your mind has made. That's where the error occurs. It's not per se in the behavior, it's in the interpretation of the scenario or the behavior that gives rise to our grievances, our hurt, our fear, our guilt. So I found over the years that I needed to do a lot of inner work. And I said, Jesus, take me to the movies because I'm seeing a lot of behaviors that seem to be frightening in these movies, action adventure. I would judge movies as being violent, too violent. And I would say, why would you take me to a scary movie or to a horror movie? What's the value in that? And he would say, well, the fear and the horror is coming from inside you. You're reading that meaning onto the movie. That's the second lesson in the workbook. I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. So I went to the movies with Jesus many times, and he would stay with me and instruct me on how to clear away my faulty perceptions. And then even after the movie, I would go and sit in my car, and he would give me another hour and a half of instructions of teaching me about the movie I just watched. How I had to straighten out my perceptions, that my interpretation faculty was the one that was causing me all the problems. It wasn't the movie itself, it was the interpretations I had. They were all based on the ego and all based on the past. So that's a good way to look at it, that we actually can forgive when we go into our mind and we start to release our judgments, our grievances, our attack thoughts. It clears our perception up, because only these attack thoughts that are egoic, they are the ones that are projecting this world and giving us all these problems, all these emotional problems.
Um, and all we have is our um, interpretation until we begin to distinguish uh, interpretation by the ego and, could we say, revelation from the Holy Spirit. Maybe a difference between interpretation and revelation. That revelation shows us what is, which is
Yes.
spirit, and interpretation shows us how the ego wishes to see things because it makes it easier to hold a grudge. If you truly did this to me, uh, then I don't have to forgive you. If you truly hurt me, or if you truly did this or that, I don't have to forgive you because the ego is saying, you did this to me. Why should I forgive you?
Yeah.
But when the Holy Spirit gives us the revelation of truly seeing, um, everything's already forgiven.
Yeah. That's it. It's truly a different perspective that we're going for. And I was looking at the comments while you were talking. There was a Sam writing, Jesus loves you. And then there was another man, his name was Carpenter, was writing from Indiana. Just Jonathan was saying that the people around him didn't seem to even care. And so that's a perfect example how when we perceive that no one around us cares and we're feeling bad, then we learn to look inside and say, what beliefs and thoughts am I holding on into my mind that would give me these witnesses? And we are praying for a new way. We're praying, as Jonathan Carpenter had written, and I want, it doesn't seem like there's somebody that has a caring heart or somebody here to help me out, but actually this is where we turn within. I found too, as I kept turning within and questioning my perceptions and questioning them as faulty perceptions, then I started to get more clear. And then as I got more clear, I started to get invitations and I started to meet a lot of happy people who did care. They were witnesses to my change of mind. In fact, I had an angry father, biological father, and over the years I practiced forgiveness for years, for decades. And then my friends would say, "Wow, what happened? How did your father get so happy? He never was this happy." And I said, "It was my mind. I was doing it the whole time." I said, I changed my mind, and then he reflected back my own happiness. So that's the way I really look at the world. We just have to do the inner work of forgiveness.
Um, by the way, Squirrel Sniper said that he had found. He said, David, I found so much spiritual awakening within the Star Wars trilogy. Yeah,
Yes.
I really hope you guys visit. I have your channel in the description. I hope all of you guys head on over and watch a movie with David um, uh, as well. Uh, I'd like to have you incorporate music in your message. So, always
Yeah,
a
I,
beautiful
I
time.
feel like movies and music have been two ways that Jesus found to really use me, because I do enjoy music, and then he just kind of used it to kind of open my heart and expand my horizons. I kind of felt like music was some kind of a communication device, like a very deep, uh, beyond my intellectual realm. And then over the years, Jesus brought in a lot of music meditations, and now on my YouTube channel, I have a friend who brings in these. He takes my talks and a lot of presentations I've done, and he uses AI tools to make these spectacular songs. So, like this morning, I did a live on my YouTube channel, and I've been doing it pretty much mostly every day, where I find I'm just so expanded in the music and the lyrics that he's generating for me, these songs. So that's my latest kind of endeavor with letting the spirit use the music to expand my mind and my consciousness.
Um, so Lee Lee pointed out that I forgot to put the link to your channel. I will do so right after our conversation, and I think Lee's probably going to head over and hang out with you, spend some time on your channel. Um, I promised you an hour and a half, and we've gone a little bit over an hour and a half. Oh, Kat says, when I thought of David today, two songs about joy came on the radio.
Hmm. It's beautiful.
Um, so I really appreciate you spending time with me. And again,
Uh,
just one more time, the bringing up joy again, your joyful response of just saying yes with so much enthusiasm. Uh, like I was your oldest friend in the world, inviting you over to hang out with me. And you, of course, I'm going to hang out with you. I wouldn't think otherwise. Um, that that alone means
oh,
everything to me. So thank you.
oh. Thank you so much, Eric. It's
Um,
been of such a joy being with you.
Would you consider sometime in the future, maybe in the new year coming up, coming by, hanging out again?
Yeah, that would be great. I like how you wrote to me and said, "No, I don't want to interview you. Let's just have a conversation." That's the best.
Um, and that was inspired by you. To interview you means I would have had to sit down and ask, make a list, specific questions. Um, and you've been interviewed lots of times, um, but I'll be honest with you, I just like you. So when when you like someone, you just want to sit down and talk.
Yeah, just have a nice friendly conversation. That's the best way. We're
And
doing it for the whole universe. We're doing this as an example. This is the way friendships can be.
and I told someone that earlier. They said when they were talking about coming up on my channel, how many people do you normally get? And I said, I don't know, but it's there forever. It's there for as long as we have YouTube. So we have a nice conversation, and people will find it when they need to find it.
Oh, that's beautiful. We're, that's
Thank you so
for
much.
that's our contribution to the whole.
I appreciate you allowing me to be part of it.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
All right. Thank you,
Blessings,
David.
everyone. Blessings.
Take care, my friend.
Okay. Bye bye.